Welcome to Dynamics Corner. This is Kris.
And this is Brad. This episode was recorded on October 20th, 2022. Kris. I always look forward to seeing you sitting in this Dynamics Corner chair stuff that we have.
Same.
And
Same.
I always enjoy talking to you. Last week, we had the opportunity. I think it was last week. Time flies or changes.
It's
a blur. Last week, we had the opportunity to go to Summit. So in this episode, we had the opportunity to sit down and talk about our experiences.
Yes, let's get to it.
So,
all right,
Kris,
Brad. Yeah. So
look at that. We're going to talk over each other. It's okay. Go ahead.
No, man. I was going to say, Summit. That was last week. As of this recording, it was last week. It feels further away than that.
I thought it was 2 weeks ago. Did you ever have? I really had to sit back when we decided we wanted to talk about the whole event as a quick recap of our experience from our point of view. I had to sit back and really think about when it was.
Yeah, no, it's good. So how was your experience coming down? The whole process of flying down from and then joining.
My trip down to Summit was uneventful. I got on the plane, flew down, no delays, no problems. Got to the airport, took an Uber over to the event location, which is a great location. I think it was a great location for the event. The only thing about the location was at the Gaylord Resort in Orlando. It's just a little big. I think it's one of those things. It's a great place for an event, but I wish that I had gone a day before just so I could learn my way around the place because it is so big. I think I got in the first day of the event. I didn't really have a chance to find my way around. And then the second morning, I got up to go to the gym, and I was looking to find you, and I got lost. And I think I had 2,500 steps from my room to the gym. By the time I got there, which is about a mile. So I ended up walking around the hotel for a mile. They have the maps and such, but that has nothing to do with the Summit event. That's just just going to a large event hall. Fortunately, there's a lot of room there. It's like a little city.
It was, dude. It was a really nice place. In my experience, I had a pretty smooth flight. I did take a red eye though, and just slept it off. But flying across the country, the time difference kind of throws you off. I came in like 7 a.m, and I was luckily I've been to this place before. They did this back in, I think it may have been 2019, the same place. And so I was able to navigate myself. But yeah, I'm pretty sure you would have got lost. I think the first time I did get lost navigating this place because it's so big. And then you got lower levels, which is like not quite connected, but it was sort of connected. It was kind of weird.
There's a jungle in the middle of the place.
There is too. That's right. And there's like alligators.
I had been there before, but I didn't spend a lot of time in the actual place. I just went from outside to where I was staying, in there. So I didn't really get the chance to navigate around. But, finally, by the time I left, I knew my way around well. But that's always par for the course is you're there for a couple of days, and then the last day you just know where you're going, and it's like, okay, I'm leaving, and then I'll forget all about it. But
yeah,
I think overall, personally, from my point of view, I think it was a great conference. And I think with everything, I'm sure it's tough, logistically. They did have some logistic issues, I think, that were visible. But I think it was, probably due to not expecting as many people to go, which is, in one sense, a good problem to have because, last year was a smaller conference because of, the whole COVID situation where, things were virtual, things started becoming in person. I think this year was a tough year for any event, not just this one, to really truly gauge how many people will go. And these reservations that they make, they don't start planning these conferences, the day before. So they have to reserve the conference, what, a year out?
A
So
year
then
out, yeah.
they have to make the best guess of how many numbers that they want or how many numbers that they think will attend and plan for it. So I think they had a larger turnout. I think in one case I saw there was 6,000, I don't know the actual number, but a lot of people talk about what they see or what they hear. I thought somebody said about 6,000 people showed up, which is a lot of people.
I think so too. They were saying about 6,000 people, 4,000 of that are customers, which is a great turnout. At Summit like this. I mean, like you said, Summit last year in Houston was, less numbers. And that is one of the negative component of the summit this time around was the application itself, the app that they use to, track your agenda for the day and navigating and finding yourself around like what room is this going to be, this session is going to be. And I had I had a session, and one thing that someone told me is like, hey, your room number was wrong. And so that was my biggest concern. It's like, well, if my room number was wrong on the app, luckily they still found the room. But if it was wrong, they would have struggled trying to find my session. And so I can't imagine if
Was
there's
the
any
room number wrong, or did you go to the wrong room?
No, the room was wrong on the app.
Were you planning on going to the wrong room? No. Well, yeah, before we go back to that. So Summit is Microsoft's conference for Business Central, their ERP, what I'll call their ERP product conference, right? It's put on by the user community. It's not Microsoft's, but it's the Dynamics community's conference for Microsoft's ERP suite of products, correct? And that
Yes.
includes Business Central, F&O. What do they call that today? I don't even know on a day to day, to be honest with you, what they call it. F&O at this point.
Supply chain. I think it's
Or
called
Dynamics 365. Anyway,
Yeah.
but anybody who's been around, we can call it Exapta, AX, F&O, Finance and Operations, Power BI, and also
GP.
Power Platform. Yes, Great Plains, Solomon, SL.
Yeah.
Is SL even alive anymore?
Yeah, you're gonna trigger a lot of people.
I like the trigger. So that's what this conference is about. Yeah, I mean, you want to jump right into it. Yes, that application was horrible. I mean, it was so bad that they switched it mid-conference. I mean, I tried to use that app to pick, I scrolled through the list because you couldn't really search. I mean, they had what, 600 sessions, 500 sessions, a lot.
A lot of
And
sessions.
you
yeah.
couldn't, and again, with it being such a mixed conference, you couldn't really filter to say, I want to just look at the BC, easily I want to look at the BC, sessions.
Yeah, I didn't quite understand that in the previous years they've used the app. I think it's the same app and never had any problems. So I don't know what changed. Now it could be volume, but they've had bigger volumes before. I mean, pre-COVID numbers was up there.
Well, the volume could have been the performance because the performance was horrible of the app. I'm talking even just navigation of the app was horrible. And then you would check off that you had like favorites, like you understand. So you could put a little star next to the sessions that you wanted to attend. And I figured I would be able to have, this is my favorites. I don't know. Sometimes I was clicking around and I found like I was on a filtered set of BC. And then the second day, the app changed and you were able to add filters, but then I would select, Business Central, and it only showed me one session on like the 13th.
Yeah,
And I'm like, I know there's a lot more Business Central sessions between, now and the 13th. So that's one thing that I can hope that they can improve upon.
Yes.
I do think that, I think the number of sessions were great. Also, ISVs go to the conference too. I know we talked about the applications, but a lot of, independent software vendors, right? Is that what the I means? Independent?
Yeah.
Independent of Microsoft, and they're not partners.
Yeah.
But, so it was a large gathering. They had two sections to it, right? They had the expo hall, which had all of the booths for partners in ISVs or anybody that wanted to have a booth. And then they had on the other section, they had where the session rooms were. So the sessions were conducted by people who signed up to do sessions. I think Microsoft did a couple sessions, and then other members of the community, whether it be partners or even users, were able to present,
Right.
which was great. So I think the expo hall was nice. I liked the fact that they had one expo hall and everybody was in the same room.
Yeah.
Instead of
Yeah.
having it separated by product. To me, that's like a positive. Like you can put a ding for a positive because that allowed conversation across products and it allowed people to see other applications, other products, other solutions. So I think that was a very good thing within the expo hall. I think that within the expo hall, they had that little lounge stage area, which was way too small because they had some stuff in there and then people were pouring out, standing all over the place, and you're standing behind a wall and you can hear, but you can't
You
see.
can see. Yeah.
I think that was too small, period. So if they
Yeah.
had originally planned 4,000 people, 2,000 people, I think that seating area sat 50. So,
Yeah, that is
that was way too small for them to do. I mean,
interesting.
some of the things they could do in there, but when they did like the partner drawing for prizes, like that should have been upstairs or something
Yeah,
in the large hall.
I think a couple years ago, I think they did something very different because they needed a bigger stage. And you're right, the stage was really small, and you had a lot of people show up, and it was
It's
just
not on the stage, it
overflowing.
was the seating. They had
Well,
like 50
seating,
seats.
seating too. But I think what they've done several years ago is that they did it upstairs or a different room where it's a lot bigger, but they also broadcasted it down to the expo hall. So it allowed for people to be in the expo hall and still be able to watch that whole event while in the expo hall, and people that are in the expo hall was able to watch it as well. So maybe they'll do a little bit different next year. And I've never been to the one in Charlotte, so we'll see which is the one for next year in
Yeah, no, I
2023.
think I do understand. And again, this is just constructive criticism. I do understand, why they did some of the things because they had to plan so far in advance. Hopefully next year they plan better, and these are some things they can think about. I mean, the expo hall, I like the layout of the expo hall. I liked everything being together. If we're going to cover the expo hall, one thing I did not like about the expo hall, which they were different. I mean, I think the expo hall hours were 1 to 7, right? Roughly.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
didn't have, which we'll talk about as well. They didn't have, the sessions ran until 5 and then the expo hall was open until 7. Now the intention was, people would go to the expo hall in between sessions, or if there weren't any sessions that you wanted to see, go to the expo hall. I don't think they had anything to, other than the people in having booths and people wanting to see, what offerings partners and ISVs had. There wasn't anything to draw people there. So at 5 o'clock, if you think of like Directions throws in a couple drinks and they have food within the expo hall set up within the aisles, which attracts people to go down to the expo hall because, hey, you can attract people with, food and drink. And then
yeah.
it forced them to walk around and look at, to help those that sponsor and pay for booths to get a little more traffic.
Right.
I would have liked to have seen that. Now we'll talk about the food. I mean, I think conference food is conference food. They set it up. You had breakfast. They set it up. You had lunch. I think they could have had like coffee snack stations in between.
Yeah,
Because they set everything up. You had coffee, breakfast, done till lunch. You had lunch, done.
yeah.
You're done. Right.
You know,
And
did
they
you
could
like
have
the
had
food?
like something in the middle. Did I like the food?
It's okay.
You know, it's I look at it as you go into a conference, right?
Yeah, yeah, but you know what
They
though?
didn't.
I gotta
The only
tell
thing
you,
I like
yeah,
the food. It's conference food. The only thing I didn't like is they didn't have any fruit.
they didn't. I know they had
They didn't
like
have any
dry
fruit
fruit. They had dry fruit.
unless I missed it. I mean, breakfast you had eggs, sausage, bacon, home fries, grits, and stuff to put on top of it. Lunch you had salad, meat. The typical pasta or whatever. I don't even know if there was pasta. I don't even recall. We should have done this earlier. But they didn't have, water was hard to come by.
Yeah,
And, coffee was available in the morning, but you figured they'd have coffee stations throughout the day. I don't know if, and again, some of the stuff, I don't know if it's the planning committee's issue or if it's the conference center.
yeah. I know. I don't know, man. Because when they did this in Houston, they had a one thing that I love about that was within the same expo hall, you can walk over, and they had food trucks for food, which is amazing because then you get to choose what food you want to eat. It's so good, man. Like I know they didn't have the position to do that at this, at the Gaylord, but
I
you
love food
know,
trucks. I
that was
love food trucks.
amazing. I think everyone loved that though. So, but there's a lot to, there's obviously there's a lot to improve with the next
But
summit. But I would say though, I did enjoy it very much. There's a lot of new people that showed up,
oh,
new first time.
I think it's great putting it together. I thought it was, like I said, I thought it was a great conference. There was a few logistic issues, I think, because of the number of people. The application was horrible. Throw some food in the expo hall, and that's about where my negativity, or my
Right.
dissatisfaction goes. I think the session. I do have one more comment. I thought the sessions were great. They had a large variety of sessions. Had the app been easier to use, I could have found the sessions easier that I wanted to see.
Yeah, I think
But
there'd be more attendance. I
but
agree with you.
I like how the sessions were segmented, laid out, the offering spread out. I mean, there were sessions that were duplicative, in my opinion, for content, but
Hmm.
I appreciate everybody volunteering the time, but I do like the fact that there was some overlapping content because there were so many sessions that, you had competing sessions in a sense of, well, I can see like an Excel and Word session, but I also want to see this session. Oh, but it's okay because tomorrow there's another Excel reporting session. So I can, see this one today and then I'll go to that one tomorrow. So having some overlapping and duplicative type sessions to me is a positive
Hmm.
because it allows somebody to see more. I know some
Yeah,
people don't. Some people say, "Well, we
yeah,
only want one topic or the like," but I appreciate having the opportunity to this or that and not miss out. Because in some of the other conferences, if you have one session on one topic, you have to choose sometimes which one's better, unless they're all recorded. So you also have to
yeah,
pay attention to
yeah.
which ones are recorded.
I agree with you on that one. I do think the um I one of my sessions I plugged in another session that was very similar to mine. Um, I did the do's and don'ts of a nav BC upgrade, and I knew that there was another one on Thursday of the what I think it's called gotchas of a nav to BC upgrade. So it's very close in terms of the topic, but they dove into a little bit more detail about permissions and so forth. So, hey, I know that you're in this session and I'll talk about this. This is my agenda, but there's a session on Thursday as well that you guys can join that dives into much of the BC aspect
And
of it
I think
things.
that's what I was saying. Is I think that's a positive because it
Yes.
gives people the opportunity to see different things. And I appreciate everybody who had a session. I enjoyed the sessions that I had gone into, and I thought they were informative. The only thing that I think they need to monitor is I was in a couple of sessions that had topics, and then you go into the topics and it was a sales pitch. All right, I won't get into it, but
Yeah.
it's somebody saying, buy my book, use my services, and do this. Where these are supposed to be education. I know for the ISV sessions or the partner showcases or other things
Yeah, that's
where,
a given.
hey, the ISV's sponsoring this, we're going to give them the opportunity to present their product and sell it. The partner showcase is the same type of thing. These are people who are sponsoring the session. Let's give them the opportunity to talk about a topic that they want, which gives them free reign. I think the other sessions should be strictly educational. And if somebody wants to mention a tool that they use to help, they shouldn't be part of a group that gets financially rewarded for promoting that. I was in a session where somebody talked about these are the tools that I use, and they were very clear. I'm not selling these. I'm not, you know,
Right.
these are tools that make my life easy. They're free tools, or this is a tool that I use that you pay for, but I'm not associated with this, and you don't
Yeah.
need it.
Yeah.
That I'm okay with because it's like, hey, this is a quick tip. I found that I downloaded this extension, put it in, made my development life easier. But I
That
think
makes
that's one
that's a
thing.
good point, man. That is a good point because it is for educational. You have to think about it for people that, they want to use the system, the software out of the box as much as possible. I think it's fair to say, hey, I use this tool to make it easier. However, I'm not associated to it.
I'm not getting paid for it.
Yeah,
But if
exactly.
somebody's, if you're in a training session, then it just becomes a sales pitch. And it's like,
Yeah,
well,
yeah,
you're taking away from the aspect of the tool.
yeah.
You're
And I
taking away
and I
from the aspect of,
agree, and there are some, I know a lot of these, a lot, or if not most of these sessions are. volunteer. You're just
Yes.
sharing your experience, which is good, and it gives you a little bit more perspective of how you should approach certain things, or how you should consider certain processes in your business. And there's a lot of contents in there.
No,
And I'm
I
happy for that.
appreciate anybody who
Yeah.
speaks at those sessions, and it's always easy for someone to comment or something about somebody who spoke at a session. But until you do something yourself, you can see it. But these are people, I like the real world aspect of it, that people sharing their experiences, sharing what they go through, and getting up and wanting to do it because of what helps the community, makes the community grow. So I think that they had a good variety of sessions. I think that the sessions content was good for the conference, right? They didn't have anything, I didn't see anything that, was out of place. I think they had different levels. They had some development, they had some functional, they had some finance, they had some tax, they had a good wide range covering some things that may be basic. But again, if there's new users to the application, they want to have the basic stuff.
Yeah.
There's a little more complex. You look at some of the development or some of the other topics that, maybe someone who's been around using the application can get a little more out of it. So I really liked the sessions.
I do too. I do too. One of the things that I noticed, when we were looking at statistics, they were saying, before this summit occurred, is they were saying, hey, 60% of attendees are first time. But when I was going through my sessions, I had asked a question to the audience, how many of you are first time? I would say it was more than 60%, at least in my sessions that I was speaking to. And it was, I would say 80% of them raised their hands. It's like, hey, it's my first time here at Summit. And I wanted to make sure that they are getting the most out of it, right? Because I have a long history in the community. And one of the things that, I give my time back to the communities, because that's how I was able to understand and get to know the application, is through the community. And so I think it was more than 60% for sure. A lot of them are still in NAV that are thinking about going to Business Central, NAV or GP. But most of the people who raised their hands were NAV first timers. So what was your biggest,
Well,
Brad?
weren't you teaching Business Central sessions?
Well, I was teaching NAV to BC, and I did have some GP folks in there too, which is, they're also looking at,
Okay.
what to do, or
Well,
what
I
not
was
to
just
do when
saying
you're
that,
doing BC.
of course you're going to have a higher percentage of NAV
For NAV, yeah, yeah.
if you're doing a Business Central NAV topic.
Yeah, that
I'm just
makes
calling
sense.
it out.
No, that makes
I have
sense.
to do that.
But the title could have been different too, because the upgrade to Business Central is not necessarily you have to come from NAV, right? You can come from GPSL, or maybe move away from F&O and go back, go to Business Central.
Do people
But
do that?
oh, I think so. They realized that, hey, I got oversold
No,
on this
I
thing.
know. So
But
yeah, so that was the experience. I mean, I think overall it was a great conference. I think this is a conference that's targeted. It's put on by the Dynamics communities, so it's a user-based conference, and I think it's perfect. So the target is people using the application. Partners and ISVs go because they want to, show what they have to offer to the community, as well as present to those users. So I think for what the conference is, I thought it was a great conference.
Yeah,
and I think that anybody who's using the application would have gotten something out of it based upon the volume of partners in the expo and offerings, not just consultation services, but products, as well as from the user session. So I think other than the food, the app, and
I think it was
me not
successful.
knowing how to navigate through a large hotel, I think it was a great conference. The keynotes in the morning, I think, were amazing. I always look forward to
Yeah,
those. They're
great
informative.
guests. They have great
And
guests.
it's even like we said, because that first morning, I forget who it was. I took a screenshot because he had some stuff on there. He was perfect for it because he said, "Hey, I'm here. I'll give you a free PDF. I'm not selling anything, and I have some copies of my book. I'm not selling it." Like he
Yep.
was very
I'll give
clear
for
that
free.
which to me, it's a nice tone because he was up there speaking, doing what he was doing. I'm sure he gets paid for it. But from a user point of view, he was making himself available to talk to. You can get copies of his book. He was going to autograph it, which in turn, yes, it is a sales pitch, but you weren't obligated to do
Yeah.
anything. See, I like that type of stuff. But I
Yeah.
thought the keynotes were great. They picked good speakers, and it was motivational. I like those for these conferences.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that and in this
I feel
community,
winded today. Why am I winded? Do I sound winded?
no, you don't
Or am I
sound
just
winded.
talking too much?
You don't sound winded. But the community itself and Summit itself is one of the things I look forward to every year, because the community, we talk about how the community is so small but yet large, that we get to see old friends and make new friends. I do enjoy that, and I know we interviewed Naveen at eShop. It's not all about the party and relaxing. There is a lot of work behind that, especially if you're involved and you have speaking sessions. It is very stressful. But I would say that, on the days that you do have some downtime or time in between, running, uh, you know, running across someone that you met several years ago or in the past several summit sessions or summit, it's nice to see people. It's nice to see old friends, because you see them like once a year, and of course that COVID kind of like took away, like, hey, it's a 2 year gap or whatnot. But it was good, man. That's one of the big takeaways that I had. And the second takeaway I had is there are a lot of people trying to figure out where they want to take their business next. If I'm coming from Nav, I'm coming from GP or SL. Is Business Central right for me? I think there's a lot of that, questions that were still
And,
around, including
and my answer is
in-house
always
dev.
yes.
The answer is yes. You gotta
No, Business Central. I'm,
move.
I'm like a Business Central addict.
Yeah, you have to move to Business Central, I think, in my opinion. If you're on the
No, in
Nav
my
right now,
opinion too. Yes, or even not. GP, I'll trigger them all. Like GP, SL, Excel,
you gotta
QuickBooks.
move.
Go to Business Central, and
Go
then
to Business
also
Central.
also use Power Platform.
Yes, go to Business Central, use Power Platform, find a good partner. There's good ones out there. And one thing too, I noticed a lot of small partners that came in as attendees as well, learning from other partners, which is interesting
Well,
to
that's
point as
everybody
well.
has to learn. I think that's one good thing about the community. I think I said this before in conversation. Everybody benefits if Business Central is implemented properly, if it's used properly widely. I mean, there are a lot of businesses in the world that can benefit from the use of Business Central. So there's a lot of opportunity for partners and resources to assist with the implementation of those. So everybody working together for the betterment of the product. Jeez, everybody working together for the betterment of the product
Yeah,
helps everybody become successful. Like I want people to be successful implementing Business Central, because
right.
then the product has life, more goes into it. They share that it's a great product, and everybody, benefits from the widespread use of it.
Yeah, Microsoft invests more in it. So what's your biggest takeaway, Brad, out of that summit? What was your biggest messaging coming out of that summit for people from a user perspective? What do you think the biggest takeaway from
Well,
your
I
from your perspective?
the biggest takeaway, that's a good question. I have to think on this for a moment. My biggest takeaway is Business Central. That's my biggest takeaway. No, I think, and again, it's there wasn't a clear message to say this is something you have to do. I think the clear message was there's information and there's resources available for you to be successful in the implementation, and there is a direction for you to go. So, showing, I didn't look at some of the other product sessions. I know that there were product sessions other than Business Central, but I think seeing an event such as this from the user community solidifies that there are resources available to help you with your implementation and to help you resuscitate your implementation if you're having a problem. And also, there's places to go to get your questions answered.
Yeah, I'm gonna
And
agree
I'm
with you on
waiting
that
for the
one.
fancy new website.
I agree with you on that one, because that is my biggest takeaway as well. Based on just my experience and talking to a lot of people, is that they had a lot of questions of what to do, whichever whichever Dynamics product you're coming from, whether you're coming from GP or NAV or SL, in having to move to Business Central. But what does that mean? What are your options? Who can guide you along the way? And I think that was the biggest takeaway for me. And again, that's from my perspective, based on the people I spoke to. Like you have to move, and accept the change that's coming. That Business Central is going to be where Microsoft is investing on. So, if you're coming from GP
So you're
or
saying go to
SL,
Business Central or die?
I would say go to Business Central. They do give you Microsoft is giving you a lot of time to transition, and I would recommend to uh, use that time to start planning now, right? What does that look like? What does that mean? I understand. My understanding, as of this podcast, as of right now, is that Microsoft will continue to support GP, right? They will continue to support GP. However, they're not putting new features. That's the same thing with Nav, right? Like Nav was the same thing. They'll continue to support Nav, but they're not going to add new features on older versions of
Yeah,
Nav. And
it's
so
understandable. Every
GP is the
product
same.
should every product version or product should have an end of life. I think it's
Absolutely.
just you need to have an advancement to the application.
Yeah. Start
Uh,
talking to partners. What to do? What does that look like for you? If you're in GP right now, SL, NAB, what does that look like for you? What are the steps that you should take now to prepare yourself to move? Look at your critical processes, critical part of your business, and how does that look like in Business Central? How can you accomplish that? But that's what I took away from that summit.
no, good, good. So it's a lot of positive, a couple of things that could be improved upon, and a lot of takeaways. I think anybody who went would have their own takeaways from the conference. Always interested in hearing about anybody else's thoughts on anything that we talk about. And with that, Chris, it's time to say goodbye. Until next time.
Until next time, everyone.
All
Take
right.
care.
Thank you.